call the meeting to order at 5:03. And no guests. So I guess we will approve the consent agenda. And do we have any warrants we need to sign? Oh, nothing. Okay. So the consent agenda and minutes from our last meeting.
Move we accept the consent agenda and approve the minutes from August 23rd.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. And so I guess we can start with committee reports. We'll might as well start down at the end. Jeri?
Mine isn't very different than what I had last time, as I give you a report our last meeting. But it just indicates that our enrollment is 146. Again, that's with our pre-K. So normally we were right around 130 last year. So that represents a few extra students in our pre-K, of course. Really don't have attendance averages for you quite yet. We did have our first fire drill last week, and we'll have our first lockdown. And these are all very much practice drills. We did our fire drill without an alarm. We'll have another fire drill with an alarm in a couple of weeks. Our lockdown drill will also be, it's educational. It's giving us an opportunity to train, and we'll have that this Friday with our kindergarten gone. And so pre-K and kindergarten are not going to be there for the very first one. And then we'll actually spend some time going in and working with pre-K and kindergarten individually in the classroom and talk about what it means to have a lockdown, what it means to hear the fire alarm once it sounds, and that sort of thing. And then the only other thing, I mentioned, our first day celebration, our last meeting. We had at any given time upwards of about 60 adults that participate in our parent workshops while the kids are in classes, stay for our pizza picnic lunch with everybody. So that's always a great celebration, a great way to start out the school year. We have the Bike Smart program that's going to be coming to Oak Grove in a couple weeks. That is a program where they bring a trailer, they drop off a trailer, and it's full of 20 bikes of various, it has, I think, like 80 to 100 bikes in the trailer, but of various sizes. So our PE program that week will be focused on getting in the trailer. Kids will be on bikes, doing some bike training outside, hopefully. And then it also is available then for classrooms to take kids on bike rides around the neighborhood. After school program will also incorporate our guiding principle of safety awareness that week. So we'll kind of focus on that. So it's kind of a neat, it's a neat thing. Alice Sharks from Green Street will be actually doing the Bike Smart adult training that we have to do in preparation for that. And our open house is 21st. And we have new PTO co-chair, Jen Korse, who's a teacher and a teacher at the high school, as well as a parent here of a 5th grader, and Jessica Bashford, who is a parent of a 1st grader. So they're going to be doing some co-coordinating of our PTO this year. So we've been working with them and how to adjust a little bit so that parents don't feel that all PTO is for is fundraising. We're trying to really kind of get away from that and have PTO feel a little bit more around community building, networking for parents, educational opportunities for parents, talking about a whole host of different things. So that's kind of our plan.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deb?
Okay. So our next policy council meeting will be September 27th. We actually have been void of policy council meetings face-to-face for the last couple of months because our agenda hasn't been substantial enough. So we've done some electronic hiring recommendations for back in full force September 27th. That's not our typical night, but we bumped it because we have a board meeting, so. We are looking for new members. This is our recruitment time, so if you know of anyone who would like to join as a community member, that would be wonderful, so please let me know. We held all of our open houses last week, and I was able to attend all but Westminster. I actually did a site visit there the day after. Our open houses were by and large in the early morning hours and through probably about 11:30, up to 1 o'clock, I think, somewhere at Canal Street. And we were surprised that we didn't have the turnout we typically see. We're not sure why. We did have a smattering of parents in all of the centers, but not an outpouring as we typically have seen in the past. We're also seeing that trend with willingness from families to accept the home visits that we typically do at the beginning of the year. There's a lot of pushback from families. They're preferring to have their home visit happen in our classroom, so we're being respectful of that, but we're also trying to analyze the reasons why that is, and we have some suspicions which also I've talked to you about, which also I think are connected to the low enrollment that we have, the low interest in our home visiting program that is based on a weekly basis. I've talked to you in the past about our request to lower our home-based enrollment numbers, and we've actually decided not to move forward with that request quite yet. We have really until May to make that final request, and we are seeing some fluctuation in our home-based enrollment, and that's good, especially this time of year. So we've been able to maintain having slots not fall under that 30-day enrollment period. So we're really not, we've been in compliance for the last 2 months. So we're not going to move forward so quickly with the request to drop the enrollment. Hopefully we can keep that going. But there's a lot happening in the community around home visiting and the concern for, this is a trend that several other social service agencies are seeing. So we're being watchful of that, and we're trying to change that. We do our drills monthly, and we actually had a nap time drill last month, much to the chagrin of the sleeping babies and staff, but we are required to do that occasionally. So our facilities person picked the sunniest day, and we did well. We fortunately have, this happened at Bird Street, and fortunately there are enough support staff available on site to really go in and help actually carry the babies out. We have portable cribs that we can carry out, but sometimes it's the babies need someone holding them or walking them. So it was, I won't say brutal, but it was necessary. And we are, I think that's it. I think I hit all the spots. The September report will be coming to you electronically within the week. And we are actually, as of yesterday, I think we had 2 openings, child openings, but we have children ready to move into those slots. So we're doing well with our classroom enrollment.
And how are you on teachers right now?
We are down, as are many child care programs. Every day I get emails from the entire state. That's a dynamic I've never seen before. We have some classrooms where we never filled the position the entire year, and they're still open. And surprisingly, they're mostly in early Head Start. Historically, it's been the older children, the Head Start teacher slots that we've had vacancies with, but now it's early Head Start. So we use a lot of subs, and we keep advertising.
Our monthly report's coming around. The 21st is also the night of our back to school night open house. It's 5:30. And on October 14th, we are having our playground build day. That's a Saturday on October 14th, 9 o'clock, where we will be constructing portions of the new natural school playground, and we'll be constructing well, all the things we had at the time. We're still looking for donations for boulders, wood, things of that nature. We're still collecting. So
How big are boulders?
how big are boulders?
Who knows who's out there watching? How big?
3 to 4 feet, preferably round granite boulders as opposed to like square boulders. Lumber, wood, and look if someone has some nice hemlock. They don't want like long, like 25, 30-foot sections of hemlock. We'd love to take that off their hands. So we're moving along slowly. It's going to be a 2-year project, as you know, but we're anticipating after that date opening at least a portion, a small portion of the playground to students. And in the report, we've announced our enrollment as of today is 352. We closed at 346, so we're up 6. And Mark has good data on that. I know in it was a day or two, 24, 48-hour period, we enrolled a significant number of kids. Mark has a good track.
Less than 24 hours before the first day of school, we enrolled 11 kids in Brattown schools.
New people to the area then that just didn't know about registering?
Or have been in the area and just have failed to register until the day before school.
But the kids weren't here before. They're new kids. So.
What's that?
They're new kids to this.
New kids to our schools,
Yeah.
yes.
Were they in kindergarten or were they older?
Wide range.
Wide range. Okay.
I think everything else is in the report.
I've sent a text to someone on boulders and hemlock. All right, passing to you. Yeah. Mark.
Yep, it's coming around. The front page is the typical statistics. I was going to emphasize that the new enrollments, it was something throughout the summer. We really didn't get as many new families as we typically have the last few years. And then bang, day before school, 11 children.
That doesn't surprise me though, really, because if I were a family into here, I wouldn't know who to go look for or how to register. Yeah. Until you start seeing people at the school, and then you're like, oh yeah. I mean, I can see where that would happen. Maybe I'm just silly.
Needless to say, we're off to a really great start at Green Street. Lots of positive energy, a lot of new initiatives that we've started over the last few years. Really feel like we're hitting our stride with those. So they're not necessarily new anymore, but more more practice and just feeling good about what we have in place. On the backside, things to be on the lookout for after school program. We won't begin ours until October 16th. We'll have 3 sessions throughout the year. The next one will start in January and then April, the 3rd. However, we do have 2 after-school programs that have begun. We have a cross-country running team that will have their first practice tomorrow. We have 12 students in 5th and 6th grade that are composed of that team. And we have a spelling bee team, which had their first spelling practice this afternoon, actually. Our first school sing of the year, if you're available, stop by tomorrow morning. 8:25 is our start time. And we'll kick off school sing for the year tomorrow. A couple of other things I'd like to highlight. I've been approached by a gentleman by the name of Larry Johnston. who works at McDonald's on Putney Road. And there's a grand opening happening on September 15th. It's the opening night. He had been in contact with me over the summer a couple of times. We've met a few times. And he wants to sponsor Green Street School. So for September 15th, 16th, and 17th, we will get 10% of the sales on those 3 days. So it could be a really significant donation to the school. So he was at the school today. We did a little promo with the radio station, took some pictures with students. We're going to talk about it on Monday night at the PTO meeting. With kind of an exciting little opportunity that just landed in our laps, and I'm very appreciative of that. And what we're thinking with the donation is one of the projects we'd wanted to do this summer but didn't quite get to was we have this bank in the back of our playground, which is kind of a negative to our playground. So the idea is to turn that negative into a positive. So what we wanted to do is build some embankment slides into the bank, and I'm thinking with the proceeds from this donation, that's something we may be able to tackle in either early spring or before snowfall. We'll see. But I'm going to talk to the student senators about taking that project on in terms of design and implementation. So
Make it a ski slope in the winter?
it would be a slide that you could use year round, like kind of like an alpine slide, and you could utilize it in the winter. So looking at maybe a couple of different designs for that. And the other thing is our open house is on Wednesday the 27th, and that's a family barbecue open house. We'll have picnic style in the front yard. And then that following Saturday, September 30th, we have this tradition of having our annual tag sale. And it's usually really well, lots of people come to the Green Street School that day, and we sell all kinds of items. And it's usually a pretty good PTO fundraiser for us. That, along with the tulip drop, are basically the only two that we do throughout the school year. In terms of the building, the boiler project is starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. The radiators were delivered at the end of last week. They're being installed in the evenings, so I'm thinking we're pretty close to completion, so I'm feeling good about that. And the group, Froling, has been really pretty easy to work with as we're starting to get our year started. They've been very respectful of the school, students, teachers. So I'm happy about that. That's it.
Do you want to reintroduce Kelsey, just because she'll be here with us for...
Kelsey joined us a couple of times last year, but this is Kelsey Manwaring, who's a third grade teacher at Green Street. She's in a leadership program at Keene State College. She'll be formally doing her internship with me next year, but we're doing some stuff this year to kind of prep for that, and she'll be coming to all the school board meetings.
Welcome. Have fun. So we've skipped over perhaps some of the
Committee
reports here. Policy Council, is there anything, Dave, you want to add?
We will meet later this month, yep.
And the Energy Committee not meeting at the moment? Yes?
I don't think so.
It's just always on there, so we'll just check. Finance.
We've not had another meeting since the last one, so
Did you meet this morning? Or is it tomorrow?
no.
There's something in the paper.
Not
Maybe
for
the
finance.
BU number 6.
Sorry?
BU number 6. Is it
Oh, maybe
tomorrow,
that's what
BU
was,
number
was
6?
there, was that who met at 8 o'clock?
Tomorrow morning,
Oh,
yeah.
tomorrow morning, yeah. Okay, that's what it was.
There is an executive committee update though from the
No,
finance?
because everything will be after the SU meeting at the first Wednesday in October.
And diversity.
Our first meeting is the 13th.
So this was easy.
Yes.
All right. Lyle, the last of the administrative reports.
Sure, mine's very quick. partnering with the Reformer, Auto Mall, Summit, United Way. Let's see, I'm sure I'm missing someone. The Reformer had a backpack giveaway. It was, there were 200 backpacks to give away to families throughout Windham County, filled with school supplies. The extra backpacks came to my office. We're finally getting them out to all the counselors in WSESU, but it was a fun afternoon. People came to the Auto Mall to pick up their backpacks, their parents and kids, and it was the Friday before school started, so people were really excited to come back to school and get their school supplies. That was fun. That's it.
That's it? All right, then we come on to unfinished business, Act 46, the Alternative Governance Subcommittee. David, have anything to tell us?
Well, we met, and I don't know, Kim, you want to
No.
add anything? We talked about, Dummerston had created a document that listed the 5 goals of 46 and then where they were in terms of their current status, and some conversations about further things are down, how to support other schools, and a few other issues came up. So we looked at that and talked about that a little bit. We decided to invite the other SU boards to a facilitated meeting, which will be on Thursday the 14th at 6 p.m. at Green Street.
14th
It's still available.
Yeah.
14th of September, yeah, so 2 weeks from Thursday, or tomorrow. And we contacted 2 facilitators. One of them was not available, but a woman from Cheryl, forgetting her last name, she's a doctor of education from Westminster who has done things like this and is pretty skilled. And so she's agreed to come and keep us on track. And an agenda, I think, went out with the invitation. I don't know if Christina was going to send it out, Naylor was going to send it out. I'm not sure when or if she did. Did anybody get it? Anybody get an invitation?
No.
So not yet, which includes an agenda, which is pretty basic. You know, what do we want for our schools? How do we want to approach it? Anything else?
Summed it up pretty well.
Who was there? What do you say we? Was it just Dummerston and Brattleboro?
Yeah, and there were 3. There was Molly, not going to think of her last name at the moment, a teacher from Dummerston.
Molly Stoner.
Yep, Molly Stoner was there.
Molly Stoner, thank you. And 2 people that I hadn't seen at meetings previously, Cliff Adler and I'm not going to remember her name at the moment, although I've known her for 4 years. And Dick Verstis was there.
Jody Normando.
Jody Normando, and there was one more. No, I guess just Christina and Susan from
Yes,
Dummerston Board.
that's it.
Wasn't there one more person?
No, that was it.
Yeah, so that's it.
So, did you post those minutes, or did Dummerston post those? I've been asked to check in with everybody to make sure they...
Jody had more succinct ones than I did, so I took hers and added a little bit to it and
Okay.
sent them to Barb.
Perfect.
And I wasn't sure how that was going to happen, but she suggested we put them up on the 2 websites.
Yeah.
So I
Great.
think that's what's happening.
Thank
I haven't
you.
looked to see, but it should be there.
Okay. So then there was a proposed local board policy that we had tabled.
Mhm. And I still have not heard back from the attorney from either the VSBA or from
So
the
I guess
agency
we'll
of
leave
Ed, so
that
we'll
tabled.
leave that for all.
Any other unfinished business that anyone else knows of? Moving on to new business, and Frank is here to talk to us about the use of endowment funds and give us some background first on the endowment in general.
Sure. Okay, so I have a single sheet to pass around. I'm not going around. I do have a couple extras. You good? We need a couple more. At least one.
No, I think we're good.
I think we're perfect.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so giving you just a relatively brief overview of a very long-standing asset resource for the Brattleboro Town School District. What you're looking at here is maybe focus first on our audit report net asset line on this single sheet of paper. And all the way to the right, we are expecting to see one of these audited reports coming out fairly soon that will reflect $114,268 in the Endowment Fund. It's a separate bank statement. And then looking at that number and then going backwards toward the left, you see the various columns. Those are fiscal year periods. So I've given you a little history going back to fiscal year 14, you see 15, 16, and 17. So today I looked at many years back as far as I could see in the records that are readily available. And for many years, this fund has been around $50,000 level, and it's generated maybe a couple $1,000s worth of income, primarily from the town of Brattleboro, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. And so over the past 10 years or so, we've gone from about the $50,000 level and up to, you see, fiscal year 15, $62,000. That's, a couple $1,000 years over several years has accumulated to 62. And then you may recall I had reported to you the receipt of the $46,944 now about a little more than a year ago from the Jennifer Anger estate. So that substantially increased our assets. In going back to the origins of this fund, goes way back, probably to the 1800s. Mr. Dowley was one of the first to establish a fund for the benefit of the school district. And I've noted here, Dowley Fund, you see in my notes here, George S. Dowley established the Education Fund, and then down here in this section of our information here, what we had was in the archives for education and scientific purposes. And while we're on that topic, when you go to the right over there from the Dowley Fund, I want to bring to your attention, so the town of Brattleboro also has trust funds that are designated for the school district. And that's really been the source over all of these years, the interest income. And the Dowley Fund, right now, according to the town officials, has $83,000 in principal, and that is the largest single asset that the town manages. So the town manages an additional $100,000 in principal resources for the school district. And then I started the conversation by saying the school district has in their bank account $114,000. So those are cumulative, $215,000 in endowment funds. About half are under the fiduciary direction of the town of Brattleboro, and then the other half is part of the Brattleboro Town School District asset. And this is now becoming large enough to maybe begin to manage this beyond just a simple bank money market. Typically less than $100,000 because there's such volatility in the stock market and other instruments like bonds. It's hard to diversify enough to make it worth doing something other than a CD or something very short-term, very relatively safe. But I think maybe I'm glad you have this on the agenda, sort of begin the conversation about an investment policy. I have worked with the Brattleboro Union High School extensively in the last couple of years to develop a investment policy or refine an investment policy. They have nearly $5 million in endowment funds, and there's a substantial return on that. I think this most recent year there's over $400,000 in interest in market gains on that, nearly $5 million in principal. It is, as you probably know, much less typical for an elementary school system to attract and retain endowment funds, but certainly not unheard of. So the other thing I'll bring to your attention, but I'm sure you already know, so we have the receipts in the recent history. You look at the disbursements, there have been no disbursements out of these funds that I can see over the past several years. So again, good topic for discussion. Disbursements do have some restriction, but not much. The most recent relatively large contribution was the $46,944. That is from the Jennifer Anger estate, which came to us because she had no heirs and specified no beneficiary. So that, as I shared with you maybe a year ago, it goes through a court process and then is subject to the state law that says it will be dispersed to this district, and the language is for the benefit of the school district. There's really no direction for you on how you spend that. So you have for the substantial amount of your endowment funds, you really have a very broad criteria that you can consider to make your awards as you consider this resource.
So I have a couple things. I'm going to step out of the chair role and represent the Brattleboro School Endowment that a friend and I created specifically because this sort of an endowment didn't really exist according to what we were told. Although we did come before the board, Andy, you've helped me with it, I want to say it's like 8 years ago, before I was on the board. And we asked the board at the time, and they said, well, we do have a small endowment, but it's not known, and so the board gave full blessing for us to create the Brattleboro School Endowment. And so that's been in existence, and that one is out there continually trying to accumulate funds, and that one's up to about 56 or so thousand off of the efforts of a very small but dedicated group of people, including myself and Ellen, who will be sitting tomorrow all day at the Welcome Center. And then we've dispersed, and you all have seen those funds in the last couple of years, we've been dispersing small amounts for the winter sports program. And that endowment was written with the idea to support the elementary schools, but we wrote it broadly enough that it says Brattleboro Schools, so that we can be utilized, and we have been utilized by the middle school mostly, when applying for grants, and they need to have a non-profit entity, tax ID number and such, to be able to receive funds. I don't believe we've ever actually received from them. I don't think they've ever actually been granted, but we've been able to help with the process. So that fund exists at the same time. I don't know whether there's any law that makes a differentiation between endowments. I know Dummerston and Putney both have endowments as well. One of the things we looked at hard, and that's a question I have for you still, Frank, is at the time we were putting that together, the Act 60 was relatively recent, and there was a concern that schools could not have endowments because some places were trying to utilize an endowment to fund things that the school would normally do. And so we're careful on our endowment disbursements that we do not give to anything such as like a foreign language teacher's salary. That we're always giving something that the parents would be fundraising for. So our donations have gone specifically for winter sports over the years.
That's still the case. Public schools are not supposed to use essentially non-school property tax revenues non-school property tax revenues to essentially operate the public school core structure, all the things that the State Board of Education requires a public school to offer and to provide. So as you say, Stratton, Dover, many of the ski towns across the state in 1997, 98, right after 96, Act 60, as you mentioned, they could easily raise enough to operate their schools and alleviate a tremendous amount of the tax liability that went with Act 60. And the state recognized that it would totally undermine the idea of an equitable educational opportunity if some of the most wealthy economies in Vermont didn't contribute to the education fund. So they passed the law that you're referring to. But that is only relevant to those core functions. Just as I mentioned, Brattleboro Union has the nearly $5 million endowment. It is for scholarship. It is for supplemental services and awards that you wouldn't budget for in a school budget appropriation.
So, and I guess the main difference between this is that any funds that you're talking about too are controlled by the school board.
Typically, the school board would make a policy number one, honoring the donor, and that's going to be very easy for you because the donor's restrictions are very broad. So that's number one. Number two, an investment policy, and then an award criteria that guides the administration in the use of the funds. But typically there would be an application process that would be approved by the board. Many endowment funds, the donor has made the process clear, so there is no other option. So that it doesn't require additional oversight. Oftentimes the auditors will make sure that the restrictions for funds are being followed, and they would have a comment in internal controls in the audit report, if there was a deviation from what was expected. In this case, because your donor's wishes are so broad, it does lend itself more to you setting up some sort of an approval process. But the first thing is, right now you have, typically an endowment fund target is a 5% return on principal. So, with the $100,000, $114,000, that's approximately $5,000-$6,000. With the Brattleboro town managed asset, it could be that amount as well. So it could be $10,000 annually. Got to recognize that obviously if you award the entire interest income, then there's no growth in the fund. But that's all part of the value system that you discuss as a board in your deliberation. Well, do we award 1%, 2%, 5%, and so on.
A couple of clarifications. Frank, the Onger Fund and the Rogers Fund are listed up on the top. There are managed funds, but then they're listed again down underneath where it says funds managed by the town of Brattleboro. They're not included in that total, but they're under that.
Yep, good point to clarify. So this sheet is really, these three funds over here are managed by the town of Brattleboro. These are just notes on all the funds, and to the extent which we have a reference for guiding either you or your administration in how to honor the.
So there's separate columns.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, at our planning meeting, we asked that any documents that we're for anything on the agenda that they come to us ahead of time. So I'd like to have had that ahead of time so we can review it. And when I think in October, 18th, when we talk about the budget overview and the universal meals, any of those documents, you want to have those come with the agenda ahead of time. So we
You
can
missed a
review
lengthy discussion on that, Frank.
them. Yeah.
Well, I did just generate this about 5:05, that's why it came in
Yeah.
at 5:10, so it just wasn't available, but makes sense. Certainly we'll make the documents available as soon as we can.
So I guess the question for the board is if we would like to look at this. I'd comment that the Brattleboro School Endowment has been investing aggressively on ours, and we have been generating from the very beginning, which has increased. And our goal was to get to somewhere around 350 to 400,000. And at that point, we could disperse somewhere around, we figured safely 3 to 4% was what we've been told. And it's being managed by Prentice Smith for us. It's a donation that he's giving, and Joe Pichak's company is giving the accounting every year for the tax preparations. And then there's Iris Lines is also donating the website space. So there's some nice local support for it as well. But in our case, we were looking specifically at the elementary schools' winter sports programs, in so long that the schools are still doing winter sports, with the acknowledgement, of course, that at any time administrators could choose to not want to do winter sports at that juncture. We'd have to figure out what else to do. But that was one of those areas we felt like it always needed support. It was a constant fundraising problem. Also on our list has been things like artist in residence, or any other supplemental education. Again, trying to follow how the wording you had was better than mine, but anything that's, how did you word it, that's not funded, mandated?
The core operations
core
as
operations.
required by the state board.
So we would need to think along those same lines too. And the last thing that I comment to all of you is that it's incredibly easy once word gets out to have 1 million people wanting to spend all of that money really fast. So, exactly, hello. So I think if it's anything that we do feel like we want to entertain, that we want to think about how and what makes the most sense for the most kids, and what would be the fair type of a process.
So there's sort of two questions here, right? Do we want to more aggressively manage the funds, and then also do we want to do disbursements or set up some kind of percentage-based goal of spending them?
And then how? Yeah, the secondary question to the second question. Yeah.
What to spend them?
Exactly.
So 3 questions, I guess.
Yeah. And I guess that's good to look at it that way. So do we wish to have it invested somewhere else? Are we, the town you said has some, there's no way to put these two funds together?
I don't believe so, but we're going to explore that.
Because the more money you have working together,
Yeah.
the more.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it
tempting
seems-
even to say the Brattleboro School Endowment Funds to all of that to come together, but that probably muddy, well, right now it's muddied anyway. It's 3 different boards that
Yeah.
are looking at it.
What caused the initial, it looks like those are the older endowments, the Bruno Fund, the Dowley Fund, and the Clarence Stickney Fund, to be managed by the town instead of the school board?
So it appears based on the record that the Dowley and the Stickney, and the Stickney Fund, by the way, is a very small portion. It's kind of an immaterial amount when we talk about awards and so on. So the Dowley Fund appears to have been the only one that was established by the living person who created a will and decided they wanted the town of Brattleboro Select Board and or their designee to manage the fund. All the other ones, the Bruno Fund and the Anger Fund, were by default came through the courts to the school district.
But the Bruno Fund, it shows, is under the towns.
Yeah, and the Bruno, I think that was something that originated in 1963.
Okay, so it's just
And
whatever the court said who should manage it.
Back then, that's the way whomever was in the system decided that that's the allocation.
And then it looks like the town just
Brother-in-law's on the board, and that's-
periodically gives is that distribution, the 43,312?
Yes.
They just sort of like, oh, there's some capital gains here, let's give it to the school
Yes.
board to manage.
Since I've been here, I've been asking for that disbursement. It does appear that that's been somewhat irregular, but when you look at over time, it wouldn't be surprising that, as you know, if I don't know how they have that invested, but as you know, capital markets make money and lose money over time, so it would not be surprising to see periods where there is no capital gain.
Okay, so it might be that they distribute it every year that it exists, but
Yeah.
sometimes there just is nothing to give.
Yeah. And that's certainly the case with what we see at the high school now. So this past couple of years, as most folks know who rely on retirement funds and so on, that it's been very favorable years for return on equity and not so much on bonds. But 2007, 8, 9, most folks that had those assets lost 20%, and so did the high school. So over the long term, there's irregular, and that's the issue with. By default, school districts are generally going to be in the safest investment, no chance of losing principal. Obviously, for operating money that the taxpayers are providing to operate the schools. When you get into the endowment fund, will by default stay in the safest investment until there's an investment policy that does what Jill described the private group has done. And just recently, the Brattleboro Union High School Board has expanded the investment options available for the investment manager, and it's made a very significant difference in the return on investment.
I wonder if we should, for the first question, if we should ask Frank to meet with John O'Connor for the town and maybe the town attorney, Bob Fisher as well, and just give us a sense of what our options are and maybe some information about what the high school boards, where, is it in a S&P fund or Vanguard fund, where are they investing? So we can get a sense of what the possibilities are, what the options are, and maybe some sense of what the return would be, similar to what the private would be. Does that seem like a reasonable?
Marshall Wheelock is the trustee of the funds on behalf of the town. I don't know.
Well, obviously, and I don't.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think he would be probably the first person to contact. And actually, I had Gene Gilbert, our assistant at the central office, talk with him today to get these numbers. But I'd be glad to take the next step and maybe check in with Peter Elwell. And I know if we talk with the attorney, we probably will incur some expense, I assume.
Well, if it's the town attorney talking about the town's endowment, we wouldn't necessarily have to pay him.
So I'm wondering if the question we could find out too, can we get the town to transfer those to the school?
Yeah, that's
board?
probably going to be the attorney's opinion.
I'd like to know the answer to that question, because I'd rather put the two of them together before we.
Right, if it seems like it makes more sense to aggressively manage once the fund is above 100,000. If we had 214,000, then that might make a lot more investing sense.
Yeah, because the issue is always diversifying a portfolio, and when it's a relatively small portfolio, it's hard to get a meaningful return, and certainly, if you pay somebody to manage the fund, then you're really struggling to create, cash flow for awards.
So that's the kind of information we want to have to choose where we, if we could, where we could put it.
Yeah.
And then I'm wondering if our next step should be to think about what we might want to do with that.
Yes.
I guess administrators could think about what you would maybe see as a whole that's not
And I think probably
budgeted.
the people that you're inviting to come and talk about whether or not we could go make the funds and all that, might be able to also advise on what percent would be an appropriate disbursement to.
It's 3 to
Yes.
5, so I mean, it just
Okay,
depends.
that's for
it.
any amount,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
about the amount that you should.
Yeah, because then you would, well, and that becomes an issue of what we'd want to decide, but do you want to take it down so that it just remains at what that principal is, or do you always want it to be kind of still growing a certain percentage? Which is what Frank was alluding to with the 5%. If you hope for a 5% gain and you disperse
Right.
5%, then you're not growing it.
Right.
But if you have 3%, then you're still growing it by a
Yeah.
just a little bit slower pace.
But you're able to do it. Yeah.
I think I heard Frank also say we should have a policy on the approval process for dispersing funds. I don't want principals to like create these grand lists and then we create a policy that is narrowly
Yeah, we would have to do that.
defines,
Yeah.
right? So I feel like we should create that policy before we give them
So maybe the things.
I don't
free reign
want-
with their money, right?
I just wanted ideas, is all.
Okay.
of,
Maybe
like,
the things
what
that
do
we
do?
would like to use the disbursements or the interest or whatever for, will kind of indicate what the policy should be.
That's what I was thinking, yeah. I mean, if they came back and they all said that, the 3 of them together wanted to support an artist in residence at each school each year, then we'd have one number, for the one person or 2 people.
So we're going to ask Frank to talk with Marshall Wheelock and the town officials about co-joining the funds and investment options to begin, is that sort of the first
I think
step.
so.
Yes.
So just one note, the way that the Brattleboro School Endowment is given to the schools is it's $1 per student basis, which I think is
That was our
ultimate
board
in
decision.
equity. So that no matter the size of the school, it's
Right,
their
and
process.
curiously, we were supporting winter sports, so when we disperse, we actually give the most money to Green Street because they have more kids in winter sports programs because then everyone but the kindergartners. And Academy is 4th, 5th, and 6th, so it's kind of funny, but we tried to find some way.
Why is that?
That's the
I always
policy.
have wondered, why does Academy only participate for the older grades?
Well, that's Pandora's box. I opened it. Multiple reasons. One, there's not enough places to send 350, 360 kids.
Okay.
And then the other was the busing. So even we had spots which were things like the bowling alley and so forth. There wasn't enough busing to get them there, so we had to send them out in shifts,
Oh,
which was. And the third was money. Every year we did not have the money. We were.
even with the money from the endowment.
Oh no, it's like 18,000 when we were doing that many.
Yeah, it
Okay.
was, so we were literally actually on the morning of an event, worrying if we could actually pay for it. This was
The years that we did that, I was on the fundraising part. We actually finished raising the money in June and paying the last bus just before we start the next year.
It was.
It was a lot of
That
fun.
was what inspired you to create the fund.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been on all sides of this with Andy, watching it, but really having all of the Academy kids go meant that you had a lot of kids sitting and not really interested in it because you just didn't have the place that could hold them all. If you had everybody go to Mountain Snow, but not all kids want to go, I mean, that would be different, but a lot of them ended up at the bowling alley in particular, and then they just kind of...
Yeah.
And I've chaperoned that group, and it really wasn't. There were some that took advantage of that situation in a great way, and others were just not really there.
But one of the biggest was transportation. So bus would go to the bowling alley and somewhere else, drop kids off, come back, take kids somewhere else, and then go to the bowling alley, bring those kids back, bring other. So it was just this.
Yeah.
It just
There just wasn't enough buses to take everyone at once.
Right. It was excessively chaotic and disruptive. And then the money factor. I mean, it was really nerve-wracking on the morning of a. Can we pay these folks the money that we would do? A lot of Thursday nights boring if I could actually move the money.
So,
I also
Yeah, I
want to
know.
just mention, and it's off topic, but I do have the warrants here.
Okay.
do you want them to be signed?
Yeah. that
Would you like that?
so I can
So
just-
do you want a motion to move this, or is it clear what we want next, and maybe when we want to hear
If
back?
you would like to make a motion, then it'll be crystal clear.
Okay.
That's fine.
I move we ask Frank to talk with Marshall Wheelock and the town officials about the possibility of conjoining, whatever I think it's conjoining.
Combining.
Joining.
Combining, it's even better. Yep, I like that better. Combining the endowment funds and with some investment options, alternative investment options. And what's a reasonable amount of time to,
Fine.
like,
In a
2
month.
meetings away, a month away?
Yeah, a month would be fine.
Okay.
Second.
Initial report on wrong month, or wrong year,
It'll be
October 4th.
on October 4th.
Any discussion? All in?
Actually, we might want to make that the 18th because the 4th is going to be a very short meeting.
Good point, yep.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah,
October
That's the
18th.
18th.
Yeah, so-
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
There we are. Official motion and all. So that takes us to,
Actually, we'll need to make a motion to approve the warrants too because we didn't think we had any when
Oh,
we did the
okay.
initial.
so,
I move we accept the warrants.
any second
Seconded.
discussion on the warrants? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so then that moves us to B, teacher shortage, challenges of teacher pay, housing, and amenities. That was a topic that we talked about from our goal setting and put it down that we wanted to talk about it a little bit deeper today. I think we were discussing that specifically in thinking of diversity in our teaching staff, but I believe it was you, Deb, that said it's a challenge all the way around, whether we're just looking at diversity. I think you had comments on that, Lyle, as well.
So I can tell you that we all recognize there's a teacher shortage. We advertise our openings through a site called School Spring, which is a national site. But I think the principals noted last meeting that there are fewer and fewer applicants for every opening that we have. I have met with Peter Elwell and talked with him because both Peter and I recognize that if we want people to move here, there have to be, if one person's a teacher and their partner needs a job also in town, but we also need housing. We need to have reasons for people to stay here. So it's not just a school issue, it's something that we need to be looking at more across the broader community. We did talk about going on recruitment trips as a town, as the police, Brattleboro Police, and as a school district all together, going into different areas to try to recruit so that it's not just one section trying to recruit.
Come from you?
The other one, challenges of teacher pay. I think Frank and I, this was our first time through negotiations with Wyndham Southeast. We built up the top levels, but we recognize that the middle levels, middle being 5th year, bachelor's plus 30, we're lower in that section of the salary schedule than some districts around us. Wyndham Southwest, for sure, Bells Falls, Wyndham Northeast. So we can attract them, and we try to keep them here, but that middle level, we're not
Why
at the
is
same.
that? Just the way the negotiations have come out in the last few years?
Well, I don't know if you can.
It is, that's certainly in the last round that where we have now a fiscal year 18, 19, 20 contract, by eliminating the first step, which we did in fiscal year 18 and then again in fiscal year 20.
And that was something the teachers wanted to
for
do
the
themselves,
teachers,
right?
yes. That begins, if it begins to address that issue, because instead of a teacher coming in at about 38,000, they'll be coming in around 40 or 41,000, and that's what moves us toward more parity with our region. The reason why it's where it is just we've been at 0% to 1% on the base salary for a long time here in the Brattleboro system, and that's other boards have gone beyond that. So it's financial constraints. It's recognizing that we are relatively a higher level of poverty than other regions, and it's a limitation. But I think we really made a significant improvement on that in this last round.
We did that several years ago too, when we specifically added to the bottom lines and the introductory salary, so that people would be more likely to apply. I think that unless this recent contract changed it, we're generally right in the middle of the pay scale across the state. I don't know if that's still the case.
It's hard to know where we're going to end up, because fortunately, given all of the new things that are coming at us around healthcare, it's just such a huge transition. We're one of the earlier districts to settle, so it's hard to know where everybody's going to land in 6 months.
But historically, this
Yeah.
isn't just a problem for this year. This
Sure.
is a growing problem, and I think Lyle or someone said I think it was Julianne, that it's a national problem. It's not just here. And so I'm not sure. It's obviously compensation is an important part of it, but I think
When you say it's a national problem, you mean teacher shortage?
the shortage of
Not
yeah.
the
Right.
pay disparity.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I'm wondering if we need to look kind of past that and to some of the other tactics, like establishing relationships with teacher colleges and having people come up, go to visit some of these colleges, or invite students to come here and visit the district and hear about the district, and basically try to recruit people that we're interested in. So it's to be more proactive than just say, it is definitely a community-wide problem. A lot of people come here, and Andy's got a story about that, about people and they want to live here. They've got a great professional opportunity, and they can't find a place to live. And life has a story about that. I won't make you share that story.
Well, not for tonight's meeting, but
Yeah.
I just wanted to comment on what Jake said a moment ago. In terms of the average teacher's salary, and when they compare district to district of the state, they take the average cost of teachers' salaries in your district. So the average figure is, let's say, I don't know what ours is, 56,000 or something, say, somewhere in that ballpark.
Mhm.
And then you compare to other districts like Wyndham Central, Wyndham Northeast, and so forth. So that's the average of all the teachers that are employed. But that can be misleading because, for example, if you have a younger faculty in general, then your average salary will be lower. But the pay scale may be very different. But here, the issue for us in the last several years has been the middle. Not at the top when hiring new teachers per se, and not at the very end where we have people on longevity, but when we're hiring teachers who've got 5 to 10 years experience, and that's the window where we're not comparable. We're $4,000 to $7,000 behind our neighbors. So we're trying to hire a teacher from.
And those are really
Central.
attractive candidates,
Yeah,
more
that's
than
right.
people just with no years experience.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to hire someone from Wyndham Central who's got 5 years experience and a master's degree, it's a $4,000 to $7,000 pay cut. And oftentimes they say, I'd love to join your district, but I just can't afford to take that big of a cut. So that's, I think, what you were specifically talking about.
Right, and by eliminating the first step, it doesn't totally resolve that problem, but it over 2 years, we're eliminating in 18 and then again in 20, we do bridge a $4,000 difference, over 2 year elimination. So it's not a complete solution, but it's a big step forward.
So I suppose one of the things we need to do is look at that as negotiation time, but we're not going to do that for another 2 years. The contracts are set.
So if we ask the Teachers Association, if they wanted to negotiate higher salaries, I think would probably be open.
That's the point.
When we think about the mentoring program, there's a lot of possible opportunity in thinking about this issue in particular to take our mentoring program and kind of combine it with interns we have working in the schools and experienced teachers, and really do some strong professional development with experienced teachers who can act as longer term mentors for some of these new teachers, but also the interns. So sort of what David, you were just speaking about, like it's a challenge, you know, if you go down to Amherst, for example, right, the school, there are schools who are clinical sites for UMass School of Ed teachers, student teachers, and so they're funneling those people in. It's like, it's great for those schools, and so because of our geography, we don't have that kind of relationship with, you know, we don't have a school in our town or next door who can do that, but we do have some opportunities. There's already something happening at Academy through Antioch. And so that's something that I agree, should be, you know, looking ahead, how can we really bring people here, because,
I thought we had something with Keene, because we have a lot of student teachers coming through our systems.
Yes. What can start happening when you have a closer relationship with these schools is then you have experienced teachers collaborating with the college on site at your school. So they're kind of wearing two hats. They're working for the university and they're under the umbrella of the school, and that does strengthen the relationship. So yes, we do have Keene State College interns and, you know, working with us. But when you start getting a relationship where you have like a teacher with 10 years experience who's then almost acting as an instructor under the umbrella of, say, Antioch, that creates an avenue for some really cool collaborations that happen. So, and what I understand from the teacher shortage research is that nationally, I mean, there are districts in like Oklahoma, Florida, Arizona they are putting parents in classrooms. It's that, you know, they are in total crisis mode. They do not have a full slate of teachers for this year still. But what I understand about the shortage is that a huge factor for teachers and their tendency to stay is having support, having that positive work environment and having the resources they need. Especially when you're talking about a high poverty district, it's really important that teachers feel like they have the mentoring, which we have in place, and they have, resources to respond to the needs of their students, and that makes a huge difference in keeping people in the community. And the other piece is, as Lyle was talking about, the overlap with what's going on in Brattleboro, trying to attract young people to live here. I think there's a lot that Lyle's spoken about to try to kind of marry those two agendas. We're having a downtown field trip on September 16th for new hires. But the idea that this is, to kind of really show, what a vibrant community this is, to teach in this community, the community is so supportive of its schools, and there's so many opportunities locally, and so the idea is to kind of really be deliberate about showing people that side of our community. So it's kind of
the difference between Keene's program and what we're doing with Antioch is that because Keene places dozens of teachers to be in an internship somewhere in schools, and teachers go out and find the school. We have a relationship we've cultivated in our district with Keene. So we're a preferred site, I guess you could say, but it's hit or miss. Some years we get several, some years one or two. But with Antioch, we're a lab school for them now. When they promoted their master's program in education this year, they promoted that with us in that promotion that candidates would have the opportunity to have paid internships in the school. And with Deb Carnane, we have their on-site supervisor is there every day, whereas when you get someone from Keene State or UMass, that person comes out twice a semester. That professor from UMass or Keene comes out twice a semester, spends a half hour in the classroom watching the intern. They have a meeting and then he or she goes back. So what we're doing is an actual lab where Deb Kearney's available every day. And she's meeting with them. So she's working with us, working there all 5 days, but 4 days we're paying her, 1 day Antioch's paying her. So it's really a neat
That's not
thing.
gonna produce like third grade teachers through that. That's not gonna, I mean, that relationship and that program is not gonna bring more, candidates for kindergarten or special ed or whatever our needs are. Because
Right,
these
that's for a year.
are the counseling,
No, these are
students.
teachers.
they're regular ed
These are
teachers.
classroom teachers, and we're 4, so the idea right
Oh,
now is
great.
to do 4 a year. But we also have internships with counselors or administrators. I mean,
Yep.
Kelly was one, I think you were one
Yes.
also.
I was one.
You were one, okay.
I was one.
You were one, well, I'm the only one that wasn't.
Sure too. So apparently that
Jeri,
program worked.
you want
That
to?
program.
And that's another area of shortage too.
I didn't get that memo, right? I think I missed it. You guys all went through that.
Is there any other way to do something like what you've created with Antioch? Is there any other opportunities out there that we're missing? Particularly, Deb, I look at you because we've got that constant, the biggest shortage that we seem to hold is always in that program. I mean, we don't have holes like you're talking about, which would really, that's shocking. I didn't realize that they were that bad off in Florida and Texas.
States that are growing, they're building
Yeah.
schools. The population is growing. They're building schools, several per year in districts. So they've got more and more kids, more and more classrooms. And they can't get the teachers.
Right now, they're all, Texas and Florida's out of school quite a bit. Minimum.
I don't know if there is anything, but I'm just wondering about the mention of housing. If there's any way that we could think of to like create some sort of partnership or something with someone to help teachers who are new to the area find that. I mean, if that's one of the hurdles that people have to leap over to come and work here.
There are certainly houses for sale, so when we're saying housing, we're talking about affordable
Yeah, I'm not sure
housing.
exactly if it's
What
that
is
people
the
are
issue?
having trouble finding rental housing or finding houses for sale that they like and can afford.
Yeah, what is the housing issue that was mentioned then? Someone put that on, maybe that's not really an issue then.
Okay.
Well, I've heard from, a couple of my younger teachers that are in their first or second year, even though we've moved the salaries up a little bit, housing, affordable housing rentals are 1,000, whether it's here, some of them are even over in the Keene area, Greenfield, the whole surrounding areas, to have
And there's
a
not
decent
much,
one bedroom
not
in
much
a,
available either.
yeah. It's
Particularly in
very difficult to find housing, and when you do, then it's 1,000 and up usually, or they're kind of doubling up, and then so we're talking about certified teachers, but I think we also need to be thinking about our para-educators. We are we're down a para-educator. I talked to Shelley Wilson, who is the director of elementary, or coordinator for elementary special ed, and they're still looking. I think they have like 6-8 openings for paraeducators. That's a significant shortage because what we're able to offer in terms of an hourly rate, and then ask these folks to live in the community. It's a struggle. They have, the paras that I have working for me, half of them leave here at 3 o'clock and go to another job. So, and they're vital to our school community and to help our community, our schools operate the way that they do. So.
Now, how are the para salaries determined? Is that part of the negotiations
Different
also?
contract
Same,
negotiation.
same union?
Different union and different contract. And it
Different
was,
contract, same union. Mhm.
but it's the same, this year was, both of them came up, which is unusual, right? It should
Oh,
be
yeah,
every
that's
other.
right.
And the relatively new issue with paras is that we're now, well, by law, paras have to have at least a 2-year degree, 2 years of college or the equivalent. A lot of our paras now that we're hiring have bachelor's degrees. And that, 10 years ago, that was not the case. And so we're looking for paras with more education, which often means we're looking for, often it's the case, we're looking for paras who are coming from outside the community. And that, so that applicant pool, has changed significantly. So if you're coming from outside the community and you've recently gotten a college degree, and you come into town and you're only making $13 an hour, it's a tough place to find adequate housing to rent.
Although if we look at that study, Frank, what was it called, the PICA study?
Mhm.
Their statement is that paras pretty much shouldn't exist.
Well, not to that extent, but but they are saying Vermont has a seemingly different reliance on paras than other states, but they certainly they assign an important role for para educators, but they often refer to them as in different capacities, more around instructional tutoring. And so on, but yeah, they do emphasize avoiding using paraeducators for instruction.
It doesn't seem like that's a heavy reliance, though. I mean, at the moment they are used in like a complementary way, not in the para is doing it. Like it's not like at the colleges where they got adjuncts teaching all the classes and one professor.
I think the PICUS, the model that PICUS used to come up with the ratios doesn't include a lot of paras, which is one of the reasons it doesn't really work for Vermont. It's one of the 3 really big reasons that it's not an appropriate model to evaluate Vermont from. But the way we use paras in terms of special ed is pretty efficient and pretty cost effective. Whether we can afford to pay them more so people don't have to work 2 jobs is, it's the same question as early ed. It's a need, it's a valuable service, it's really important to the system. It's cost effective and doesn't pay enough for people to live on.
A lot of my staff are reliant still on subsidy programs, and if we give them a bump sometimes, I have one right now who just with the new insurance increases gave me a resignation because she can't afford to stay in the position, and she would be better to live at home and put her child in Dr. Dinosaur, and it's not enough to get
There's
her.
apparently, I'm not going to remember this correctly, but apparently there's a new position in the state, and I'm not sure which agency to look at that when that happens and
The
try
benefits
to
cliff.
was it?
The benefits cliff, I think it's called.
I think, yeah.
When people
yeah.
suddenly make too much for
And they lose
subsidies
their
and not
daycare,
enough to live
and they
on.
can't afford to work without the daycare.
Right.
So
Like
there's
it should be like a benefits ramp where you can like just make a little less until you finally get up to something that's like an actual livable salary, but that's like more of a state change to
But
make rather than ours.
that's changed over the last year. There was a change in that. No,
So-
it's fixed it, but it's supposed to improve it.
I'm kind of thinking this is a conversation that doesn't have any real specific end or activity
Yeah.
that we can make out of it. So I don't know that we've come to any great conclusion, but I'm kind of going to move us along. There we are.
We'll just continue to be aware of this as we
As we
discuss
think.
other
And I think too, when we talk about the diversity issue, I think, and if we start looking at how can we change our advertising and hiring processes to attract different kinds of people, that may give us some insights into how to attract just more people as well. Just what strategies other people, what we find out about other strategies that are working to inform us too.
So
And
then
everybody's working on the housing
That takes us to integrated field review.
So, educator quality standards, as you may remember from a couple of years ago, were adopted, and the state needed to find a way to assess how schools in areas are doing, and they created this process called integrated field review. And Julianne has jumped into her new job with both feet, taking this on. Created this PowerPoint that will walk us through what it is and what it's going to entail, if she can get it up.
I didn't know what the button is to get it to do a dual.
Dual screen.
Kelly might.
Yeah, I don't know if you can do it.
Kelly might. Is there anything?
Only know on a PC.
I don't know what to do. It's like there's a button.
So while they're figuring it out, you may remember I talked about it a couple weeks ago. We are assembling a team of teachers from all schools, all content area, all grade levels. We will come together, do some training, and then a few at a time will be sent out to other schools that are considered in our area. And the other schools in our area will be sending teams of teachers here to be visiting our schools, looking specifically at some criteria that Julianne will show us. And then for each of the areas that they'll be looking at, they'll be creating 2 commendations and 2 recommendations. There are no monetary sanctions or anything like that. It's a way for us to look at ourselves through the eyes of some other school districts. And it looks like she's got it set. There you are. Great.
That was just the support, because I.
Wow, thank you guys.
Do it.
So Lyle, you kind of explained this, right? Right, so, integrated field review, part of the EQR process, and it is new for us and new for the state. Lyle might have mentioned why the state is doing the integrated field reviews, but this is from the point of view of the state. What their goal is in conducting these reviews of districts is to get a sense in person of what's happening in schools, and so by doing that, they hope to understand the continuous improvement efforts and the local decisions that are being made related to these educational quality standards. They want to examine and look at the full range of outcomes that schools are delivering and see how those line up with expectations, their expectations. They want to see the good stuff that's happening so that they can use that at the state level to show models and exemplars of promising practices. They really want districts to be working together, to network together, and just to build like a sense that we're all in this together. This isn't just about WSESU, this is about the state of Vermont and how we all are working toward student learning and student achievement at the state level. So when they come on November 1st, a visiting team will come to our district. They will meet at central office and they'll have some breakfast, and then they will all go off to different schools. So as I understand it, they are going to split up, so 2 people will go to Green Street and 2 people will go to Oak Grove and Putney and so on. And those people will spend the entire day at that particular school, and they're going to be conducting observations, and they're going to be doing interviews of school staff, and they're going to be looking at artifacts that we're actually putting together now in advance that show our work across 5 EQS, educational quality standard domains. So after they look at all of that day, this team, which is made up of teachers and administrators and AOE representatives and central office staff from other districts, from a cross-section of other districts, they'll come back to central office and they will spend time looking at all of this material together and then making evidence statements based on those artifacts, observations, and interviews. They will then narrow that down to findings, and then they will actually submit a final report to us that will have 2 commendations and 2 recommendations for each domain. So through this process, there's no like number we're gonna receive, there's no passing score, there's no mandates like, okay, now you have to do this. It's designed to give us their picture of what they saw through this experience during their visit. So these are the specific domains that they're going to look at: academic achievement, personalized learning, safe school climate, high quality staffing, and our investment priorities. And these are the areas where we're currently pulling together some artifacts that will show them some of the work that they may not see just through an observation. We will also have a team that is a WSESU specific team. It's going to be 22 people, and it will include basically a cross-section of our whole district and all of the roles and the schools within that district, as well as central office staff. This team is going to help us prepare for the visit. They have to go to a training on October 2nd and 3rd, and at that training they will learn how to host this visit and get ready for it. And they will also learn how to participate in being a member of a visiting team. So this part is kind of interesting, I think, and exciting for the people participating. Is every member of this team will also get to go visit another district and be a visiting team member. So they will also join together in a mixed district group and go visit, for example, Springfield to conduct a visit. And so they'll learn how to do that at this training. These team members during the day, like during the visiting day, they really will just be in their classrooms doing their work. They don't really have any specific responsibilities on the day on November 1st, but they will help us get ready. In case you're curious, these are the districts who will be coming to us on November 1st. So there'll be a team, and on that team will be members from each of these districts. This is considered our IFR region, and it's really just based on geographical proximity. And so this is an example of an agenda that the state provided with us. So they have, they actually do have a midday debrief, and they go back to the schools, and they work till 5:30. It's an ambitious agenda.
20-minute lunch.
They're trying to think, how they're going to be done by 5:30, but they say they'll be done by 5:30.
They're used to that.
Yes. So the final report is formally written by this visiting team. As I mentioned, it will have findings for each subdomain that we just looked at on the previous chart, with 2 commendations and 2 recommendations. And I think that is...
Julianne, I don't know if, 2 questions.
Yeah.
One is about the evidentiary statements or the evidence statements. Do you have any information? Like, VSB had a workshop on this when they were setting it up, and they explained that, and I can't remember it clearly enough, the process, but I remember it wasn't just, we saw it's a really specific skill, that's a specific way of looking at things that provides do you know any more about, or can you say more about that?
That's what we're going to learn at the training.
Okay,
So
great.
when we go to the training, we will see,
Great.
we will participate in that really.
And
Because
then-
the high school goes through this process with the NEASC, right? The NEASC process. And so I was talking to the high school staff about it. They're like, oh yeah, evidence statements. Like they kind of have that training.
Yeah.
But for a lot of us, we'll be going to the October 2nd and 3rd experience to receive that.
And I wonder, Andy, since you participated in drafting the quality standards, could you say a little bit about how those domains relate to the quality standards? Because this is meant to give us information about how we're meeting the standards. Is there any?
Well, those domains are from the quality standards,
Right.
right?
Yeah, is that all there is to the quality standards? Or those, I mean, each of those, like academic achievement, there's more in the quality standards.
Right. Well, those are the domains, and then there's several bullets from each one. There's a lot more. This is sort of a compressed, taking that massive document and compressing it into a workable document. I don't know what, in terms of so they're looking at specific evidence like curriculum coordination for our school or district. There's a lot more info in the document itself, in the equality standards.
Yeah, the whole list of things of
Right.
criteria or descriptions.
Right. So this is I think, a pretty streamlined attempt to make it workable and manageable. So a team of 22 people can go into a school district, spread out, go into all the schools, and in one day make meaning of what they're observing and what they're reading.
Right. I don't know if we've ever had a presentation of the quality standards, and I've never really read through them carefully to know really what it's all about, and that's what we're using to measure our efforts or our work. That might be something I'd put on another agenda at some point, to know more about that.
Any other questions on the integrated field review? Thank you, Julian. So then the last item on our agenda before we look at next meeting and make sure we have ourselves ready would be food. And we talked a little bit about food services and policy implications. And I think this one came up in our discussions, as I recall anyway, that we wanted to hear. You said you'd changed some of the menu items, and there were also some changes on a federal level but we were already ahead of the curve, I think. So we just wanted to hear what that meant, if there was any.
Well,
Probably have to push that to the next meeting.
in terms of what's changing at the federal level,
Am I remembering this
that might
correctly?
be
Is
I'm
that-
not-
I remember it was about some increased level of quality that we were
Something with the
approving for
sugar.
the food that was coming at no extra cost. That was
Right.
the only thing I remember about that
I
discussion.
remember something about sugar, but you'd already cut out the high fructose
Yeah,
corn
we
syrup.
increased the quality of our menus.
Yeah. So it's been probably a 4 or 5 year process with cafe services to really reduce or eliminate some harmful additives that we're putting in our food and we're serving. We've most significantly reducing the amount of sugar that we were serving the kids. Kids should have no more than, I think it's 20%, 25 grams of sugar per day. And we were, our breakfasts were 50 or 60 grams of sugar. And then lunch, so you just multiply it out, we were having kids consuming,
And that's
high-
added sugar, not what's in an apple.
No, I think it's.
Well,
the
it's
actual-
sugar,
I think it
period.
includes everything.
Sugar is
Really?
sugar.
Yes.
So if you take an apple, which might have 14 grams of sugar, and then have with milk, chocolate milk, which might have 25 grams of sugar, the equivalent of what's in a Coke,
So
and
64
then,
grams.
and then French toast sticks.
Syrup.
With the syrup.
For the listening public, he's not describing the current state.
Right.
No.
So we, over a several year period to change that, so eliminating high fructose corn syrup, but then we banned that now. That was a several year effort to eliminate high fructose corn syrup. And to just, in general, lower the sugar content, increase protein, which the last federal government change in the food menu, they actually decreased protein. So they actually decreased the amount of protein that it increased the carbs. And, we try to go the other way. Kids need more protein, not more carbs. Carbs is what's causing the obesity crisis that we're facing. So that's the kind of work we're doing.
And what about palatability and acceptance? What do we see in the?
We have a great number of kids who participate in a free breakfast and free lunch every day. So
What's left on their plates is what I guess I'm asking.
they eat it up. They eat it up. You know, things like the taste tests and introducing things in small portions before incorporating them on the menu have really helped. A really great resource that we have now that parents have is our school menus. Paper copies go home, but also you can access them from our website, and they're kind of interactive. So if you go into the Cafe Services webpage or our own website and click on the month of September menu, it shows the entire month, breakfast and lunch, and then if you hover your cursor over each one of the days, it gives the breakdown of that meal. Carb, sugar, protein, percentages, actually includes a little picture of the meal that's being presented that day. So it's actually a really nice addition that parents can add
nice.
when they're thinking about.
So that brings me to a question I think I've asked before, and I'm going to dare to ask it again. At the high school, in VAMS, you can pay online for your child, and I know we have the free reduced lunch and universal meals. But you can also see exactly what your child is taking now. But we don't have that availability here.
Well, you can't pay online because you can't pay.
Exactly.
Right.
But we can't access any of the other stuff.
But we only have one meal choice, really?
No, there is other choices, because
Multiple.
they can always get, like, there's like the deli choice or the hot lunch, or for kids who like plain food, they can just get a peanut butter sandwich or a granola parfait.
Or-
Those choices are every day. And I noticed, because my daughter was really averse to me leaving, I was always there where all the kids were ordering their lunch for the day, and there's some who every day would be like, give me the yogurt, I just want to eat that. But it's a healthy meal, even if they're not getting much variety.
And each day, you can see all the different options, and you can see the statistics for each one of those
So it's as
surveys.
close as you can
So
get.
really, each option that kids have are a nice, healthy option for lunch.
I mean, at middle school and high school, as a parent, you can give your child $3 a day or $5 a day, and they can buy the type A meal, they can buy the hot meal, but they also, I've been up there a while, they can also buy,
All sorts of a la
they can
carte.
buy the a la carte stuff, they can buy, there's a significant number of unhealthy choices there that they can choose, so as a parent, you might want to monitor that. But we don't have the vending, we don't have ice cream, we don't have any of those things.
I
And
think it's
even if
gotten
you
better.
took-
I don't think that stuff is there now.
even
I
if
just
you-
went through this week.
Even if you took like yogurt, all the meals available still fall within the guidelines, nutritionally speaking. So that nutritional analysis will still within our guidelines. So if you look at what you might think of as least healthy choice on the menu every day, that's still going to fall within the acceptable range.
Any other questions on food?
Is that contract up this year? Looking at a new,
So sometime in the spring, typically we look at that. Yeah.
Usually winter.
Winter?
They'll,
Yeah.
they'll,
Maybe February, March.
Yeah, it needs to be early, January, February bid process, so it's awarded,
See you
last time all the presenters came in and fed us. Brought a nice big spread, and we overate significantly. Got pens and tote bags.
I wasn't there. I remember you
I-
guys talking
you were
about it
there,
for
yeah.
months.
Yeah.
It was like it was a highlight.
That was great.
All right, so next agenda items. What's on our work plan? Did we have a work plan sent around to us already? And
I sent it
Yes.
to you.
And we sent it out to everybody. I think everybody's looked at that from,
That's
So,
right after the.
I think so. So
Next
what's?
is goal around creating a more diverse workforce, question mark, diversity, equity, social justice and hiring practices.
So wait, go back to the first
Personnel.
one. The goal was a question mark, right?
Goal, yeah, it was,
So I think,
what's the goal gonna be around creating a diverse
so we're gonna look at whether we want to create a goal and what it would be.
Yeah, curriculum, implicit bias, where diversity, equity, action plan, implementation, and FY year-end review by Frank. And
Will
we'll
that
get
be
those
next
materials
week?
ahead of time to
Next
so we
week?
can review them.
Lyle, do you know, has there been any forward movement yet on recommending or scheduling the training for us about unconscious bias?
No, I've scheduled the gender equality person to come.
Okay.
That was in October, but I have not, and I was actually waiting until after the September 13th meeting to bring that in.
Okay.
Some other things to see if there are people in that group know.
Okay, so after the committee meeting, then
Yeah.
maybe, I guess we can talk about that also at the September 20th meeting.
So the September 20th meeting may be the meeting that Frank and I and maybe others are at the Board of Ed. I don't know
That's
what
what I was
time.
going
It has not been confirmed, our time. So, I mean, if
So
we're
we
not
might be
scheduled
late.
until 2, yeah, we might be here by 5 or 5:30, but.
Yeah, it seems unlikely that we'd be able to do all of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
All of what?
Go up to Montpelier and come
And get
back
back
and
here.
and
And
then
get
meet
to-
here and be
Because it
here.
is, Marlboro was supposed to be on the agenda ahead of us. They've already said a couple other ones were ahead of us, right?
Vernon is
Vernon's
also on the
definitely
agenda.
ahead.
Vernon is definitely ahead of us because you can't
Yeah.
go forward.
Yeah, and when I talked with Donna Russo-Savage, she said there are seven to nine agenda items that day from schools from across the state at that time. She did
Like a
not
lot.
know. That's a lot. So,
Okay, so that, and I'm
Wait.
scheduled to go up there, so that would.
You're going up for that?
Yeah, so that would be, I guess you would have a quorum to still go forward. If Spoon is
Yeah, if you have a
not there.
report from the diversity committee,
Okay.
we can make some progress there.
Spoon
And we
will
can
not
at
be at
least
that
look
next
at the-
meeting, so all
Oh, the
three.
20th,
On
so
the
the three of
20th.
us would
So
have
the
to be
three of
here.
you would all have to be here in order to conduct the
I'll
meeting.
definitely be here.
and I can give.
So
I
we
can
won't be
give
able to,
Robin some stuff.
Frank won't be able to
But
do
we
the.
can review the materials and maybe generate questions for the next meeting.
Yeah, if you send them ahead of time, they can look at it. Okay, so then the board meeting can still happen.
One of the things that we didn't do on this, on our meeting schedule is identify where they were gonna, the
Yeah, I
board
was
meetings
a
were
little
gonna be.
confused for today, but
So,
found it.
can we do that? Is that something we
Yeah,
can do
I
now,
was
or do you
like-
have to?
Thank God I
think-
printed this out because I was all set to drive to Academy
Yeah.
for some reason, then I glanced down and I was like, oh.
I thought we already
Well, the
yes,
previous
but
year's
it was en
location
route.
was
Yeah.
on there.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure that Barb usually does that, and if we started Oak Grove for 4 meetings maybe,
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we
Yep.
did in the past,
Yep.
yeah.
Unless we had some sort of
Unless there's a
community.
conflict,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So is that okay with you? And then,
There's
is it
definitely
then
the-
Green Street?
Then we
So
went
the-
to,
you're saying
we
the
went to
first 4 are
Academy.
all at Oak
Academy.
Grove?
Yep, first 4 at Oak Grove.
Then we
Except
went to
that-
Academy for one meeting for some
I think
reason.
that was a community forum, so we needed an extra
Right.
space.
And we have one of those scheduled already for early November, so that would be the Green Street one. So maybe Barb can fill it in and
Yep,
send it to us
send it
again?
yeah, sure. Yep.
That would be good.
Yeah.
But I would like us to take a tour of Green Street at some point, because they've done so much work there this summer, so.
Bring the mobile cam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe like the
Okay.
15th or something?
So any other things to add to the agenda besides what we had from our work schedule? Administrators have anything else? Okay. Any other discussion to come before us tonight? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.